Wireless is a wonderful thing. I've been involved in wireless for about 18 or 19 years. Interestingly enough, one of our folks that you've already heard from, Pocket, is involved in 12 lead ECG-based wireless technology. I was involved with Motorola now 17 years ago with the first GUI-based single lead ECG wireless technology. So it's always interesting to see that things are 12 times better than they were before. On the screen, you see something that hopefully you can see. A number of women in a girls' school in Jordan 3 years ago were asked as part of a project to describe what they thought was important with regard to the future of the Earth and the globe. And there were a lot of neat exhibits in the room. We got a chance to actually spend several hours with the girls. But one of them got very crafty and actually printed out a bunch of things that she got off the internet, and she made a laptop out of paper. So you're actually seeing a number of different things, including the speaker and speakers on the side and the keyboard and all the rest of it. And her view of how the world would be important was this notion that computers and the internet would be important. I'm not going to bore you too much with how computers are going to be important, but that's been something I've done for a long time. Instead, how many people have a smartphone? Look at that. See? How many people have a dumb phone? Okay. All right, not so many. All right, so we'll see how this one goes. But for those that have a smartphone, who can tell me what that says? Come on, I got to see at least couple people should be able to pull that out.
You can find it on the internet.
You can find it in the internet, but for those that have a smartphone, there's got to be at least 4 people in the room that can pull out their smartphone and take a picture of that screen and they can tell me what it says. Don't worry, I won't waste too much time on this, and I'll tell you what it says if I can, but I'll be very disappointed if someone can't take a picture of that image and tell me what it says. So as it's coming up, there's a couple of people doing it, so I'm going to give them a chance. This is what's called QR, which is quick response. You're seeing it start to replace a lot of things in a lot of environments that used to use barcodes and things like that. It works very, very well. The advantage is that I was able to do this just a couple of hours ago for free and create this code. You can make it anything you want it to be. So it could be a recipe for a Rachel Ray dessert. It could be a URL, which was something that somebody else importantly said. But what's neat about it is that, again, you can actually tell, the one thing you can tell about it is the more complex the dots, actually, the bigger the message, right? So there's a couple people going after it, so I'm going to give them a second. What I like about this technology, though, is the fact that it has free generators on the web. We had at least 2 different of our finalists that are using barcodes in their work, which means that they can do free barcoding to provide this information. And when I talk about I shouldn't say barcodes, it's these quick response codes. They can be generated off of any black and white printer. And what's very interesting, and it worked well on my Mac version of this, but not the PC version, it actually can be really, really small, right? Because computers can read and can read things that are really, really small. Do we have any responses? Who's got? We got one over here. No, that wasn't it. It should literally pop up. Here we go, over here. I think we have someone who's confident. Go ahead. Hang on, wait. Okay, you got it. Hang on. I want you all to hear this.
Okay, it's a quote. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. By George S. Patton.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Give him a round of applause. So that is exactly what that said. And it just as easily could have also pointed you to our URL. On every smartphone in the room, there's a free app that can do that, and it's a universal standard. So why do I bring that up? The answer is that once you have an application like that, the opportunities are endless in terms of what you can do with it. You could take a picture in a gallery and just put one of those near the side of it. You can put it on the side of a carton that you're delivering. It becomes immediately accessible and available to all. This is not the only version of this. This is the QR code standard. There's a number of other great ones that are being developed. Some are more complex and involve colors. There's some ones from Microsoft that are like that. But what's amazing is that it's something that can't be mistaken, and it keeps the integrity of the data versus so many other data types. And it can be actually handled machine to machine to machine, which means if you take a picture of it, rather than it telling you what to read, it can actually do something for you, and it can actually happen automatically. So if you want to do something on the road while you're driving, your car in the future will be able to read something like this and see what to do based upon where you are and what's going on. So there's tremendous opportunities in the world for this, and especially for developing countries, where this could be the key to a cloud-based electronic medical record. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of bring that up and sort of to start, just to give you an idea of the thinking about the possibilities. And the reason I'm so excited about that is our 13 semifinalists and our 5 finalists are all people that are seeing the possibilities, that are getting involved with innovation. And innovation is the notion of seeing something so clearly through everything else to the end of what it should be, and creating something that other people recognize as innovation because they say, my God, that is so cool, I want to steal it and use it immediately in what I do. So I'm not going to talk a lot about my background and what USAID does. That's not why I'm here. We spend $26 billion a year. We do stuff all over the world. It's disproportionately related to things like Afghanistan and Pakistan, disaster response, but it also involves very important other things like education, healthcare, job creation, and things like that. We do an awful lot, and we spend probably not enough time working with others, and that's part of what we're going to change, and I'll mention that as I talk. What I wanted really to get to was the notion of innovation, because that's what everybody in this room has been involved in. It's been such an exciting day to be one of the judges and to be involved in this. But the challenge that you all face, everyone in the room that was an entrant, is this notion of creating something that's a solution or a product that's innovative and figuring out how to bring it to scale. What we've all been looking at for you in the room is, okay, do you have what it takes to make it to scale? Right? That's the simple question. Well, what's the ingredient? What's the recipe for breaking things to scale? And that's hard. And I've been doing this for a while, and a number of other people in this room have been doing it hopefully even longer. And scale is hard, and it requires a very delicate balance of different elements of an ecosystem, and we'll talk about that. But the impacts are undeniable. So the first example that I wanted to talk about was William Kamkwamba. Who knows who William Kamkwamba is? Awesome. Okay, so that's a good number of people. So I met William in 2007 at an event called TED Global in Arusha. And William, at the age of 16, wasn't able to afford to go to school, and so, but he still liked to read. And so there were some donated books in the library at his school. He was allowed to go to use the library. One of them was a book on windmills and the fact that you could use windmills to generate power and light, and it kind of had some pictures of them. Well, this guy decided at the age of 16 in rural Malawi, where he couldn't afford the $80 a year to go to school, that he was going to build one. And this is the first one that he built. And he built it with a bicycle frame, and he built it with corrugated pieces of wood, and everyone in the village said, "Oh, William's crazy. Let's go watch Crazy William build this thing." And in Malawi, there's not a lot of trees, so the fact that he was able to stilt this together was just extraordinary. But he built this incredible windmill, and people came to see it, and when he released the chocks to let it run, it started to spin, and it turned on a light bulb. And the reason I bring it up as an example is that it turned on a light bulb that in a place that had never had light before. And it turned on a light bulb which led, very importantly, to William's life changing, because that light bulb led to a radio, and the radio led to a laptop, and on and on. But it led to the change in his family's life in that environment, and it led to the change in his community's life. And in an extraordinary way. And there's a wonderful book that's now been written called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. It's an extraordinary journey. I'm very proud to have been involved with William. I just communicated with him. Again, at 16, he was an uneducated young man in Malawi. And now we are 5 years later, and he is just entering his second term at Dartmouth. Okay. I encourage you to see his TED Talk at TED.com. Both his first ones where he could barely speak English when we first met him, and now he's reading Nietzsche. Okay, but very importantly, it's what he now wants to do from there and how it's accelerated him. It's the fact that he has 5 sisters, and one of them is on her way to becoming now an AIDS practitioner or an AIDS nurse. And it's the fact that he has aspirations for what he wants to do beyond Dartmouth. And it's also because what he's done is he's gone back to his rural area of Malawi and he's made sure that all the kids are now in school. He's gotten a little money from the book sales. They've sold well over 100,000 of these things and things are going well. But he's made commitments to creating a grist mill in his rural town and to do a number of other things that are going to help to perpetuate the change and the opportunity that he's had there today. So I think William is just one story that is about how an individual can do something that can have an impact on so many people's lives. Let's talk about a little bit about when a group of people do something like that. There's a school called Mahiga up in near Nyeri in northern Kenya, and a friend of mine went to visit in a very similar way to some of our entrants in the competition. They went to visit a place, not necessarily with an intention to do anything, but they saw a need, and they saw a simple need and something that they could do that could have a significant impact. In the case of Mahiga, the simple need was it was a dry rural school, so it had no water. So in order to be at the school all day, there was no water, which meant there was very little cooking, very little food, and no water in an arid environment. So many times people wouldn't just come to school. So this guy said, his name is Turk Pipkin, and he said, well, I can help provide a little water. So what would happen if you had rain gutters off of your roof and you collected it in a tank? And the reason I bring up this example is that he then collected a group of people. It takes a village to raise a school, if you will, but a global village. And he brought together this amazing group of people that said, okay, well, what are the things that it would take to make this school successful? So they started with water, and they got water. But to do the water right, they needed a little bit of solar, because the solar needed to provide a little bit of filtration for the water. But now they had solar, and they had enough solar energy to generate a little bit of power. So if you have a little bit of power, then if you found a low power laptop, you could all of a sudden have a computer at the school. And if you had a computer at the school, then wouldn't it be interesting if you could have more? And you can see how the cycle goes to the point now where what was Mahiga Primary is now Mahiga Primary plus High School with 12 buildings, a rainwater court, which is a huge structure that the Nike organization sponsored, that basically provides enough rainwater in one rain to last them for 3 months. So 1 2-day rain allows them enough rainwater to last for 3 months. You can see that were able to go from low power devices to more enhanced devices with more graphical power and capability. And they have a science lab and a physics lab. It grew. It grew as an ecosystem, but it grew because people recognized the opportunity in that environment and they decided to do something with it, and they got behind it. So it's that notion with regard to scaling innovation of what do you do and how do you take these things, and very importantly though, as an ongoing theme here, how do you take what was lessons learned here and do something else with it? I'm proud to say that my friend Turk, who worked on this project with a lot of different helpers, is actually premiering a film at South by Southwest that actually documents this process with the idea of how do you prevent other people from going through the same amount of time and energy to create this type of innovation that Turk did. So then there's larger communities for innovation. In 2008, President Clinton actually won something called the TED Prize, which basically takes someone who's had significant impact and gives them the opportunity to make a wish that a large community, much like the community in this room, then tries to fulfill. And President Clinton's wish was to create a rural healthcare center in Rwanda. And many of you may not be familiar with that, but you are familiar with the name Paul Farmer, who's become an instrumental voice in the rebuild of Haiti, especially with regard to healthcare. Well, Paul Farmer had started in Haiti and was actually, at this point, active in Rwanda, creating a rural healthcare system. But the way that they were doing it was not an ecosystem way of doing it. They were adding on. You can imagine building a building and adding it one room at a time. So what you're looking at is donated stuff still sitting in its original packing container, because that was helpful, because there was flooding on a regular basis, and the styrofoam protected the computers from the flooding. And they were adding things on rather than thinking about things from a holistic point of view with regard to the solution. They had the idea of using open medical record systems and doing other things, but they weren't able to extend the community to be able to do that. A number of people were able to come together with President Clinton's wish and actually take that concept and create a power system. And I don't know if I have the picture of it or not. Yeah. So the power system that was required to run these regional hospitals was created to match the needs of running this type of equipment, rather than an ecosystem solution that was designed to maximize the entire solution to then, match the needs of a power system. So they were requiring literally 10 times as much power as a portable system to do the same type of thing, or requiring backup generators of power to do the same type of thing. So you can see that's the type of infrastructure that it takes in order to do that. For the next version of the hospital, they were able to reduce the overall power consumption requirements, even at maximum load, by 80%, simply by thinking about it and being innovative about how they went about that process. I just have a couple of other examples for you of innovations, and very importantly, innovations that go forward. Is everybody familiar with this? One or two people? Okay. So on the left, because it wouldn't be fair not to do so, is my daughter. This is the Makuru slum in Nairobi. So it's not Disneyland, so she looks a little disappointed, but I gotta be careful with my promises. But what she has in her left hand, sponsored by, you can't really read it, but Vodafone, is what was called the UNICEF Lifeline radio. And what you can't see is on the backside, it was actually a hand crank radio that allowed for children, and these were given to hundreds of thousands of children across rural Africa, the ability of hearing classroom content. The reason I bring up this example is that on the right, you see something that's just been introduced in the last 6 months, which is the next generation with significant enhancements of this original model. Okay, this is an analog device in every sense of the word, right? You hand crank it and you tune it with a manual knob. This thing over here is an MP3 player with an SD card with a solar-powered pack on the top that you see there that can be disconnected and used with a mobile device, plus a hand crank capability and an offline recording capability so that you can record the MP3s as they come in at one time and then give the lecture at another. And it comes, amazingly, with a piece of cardboard and 2 magnets. And if you follow the instructions about the piece of cardboard and the 2 magnets and cut it out just right and put it all together with the wires, all of a sudden the cardboard and the magnets become speakers. And the speakers allow the teacher to get to an even larger class of 30 to 40 kids. In an offline mode, using MP3 capabilities, the micro SD card, and very importantly, the teacher can receive the content for the class to hear, but the questions that come in from the educational resource are providing questions that the teacher can ask the class and respond to on his mobile phone. So all of a sudden, the classrooms are participating in rural education. So it's this brilliant combination of things that have come together, of looking at what currently exists and saying, wait a minute, what if we just did this one thing? And all of a sudden turning something that becomes a one-way tool into a two-way tool. And the great thing is that the green one's actually available at a price that's less than the original blue one is that was generated just 6 or 7 years ago. So this opportunity to rethink and redesign. They talk about innovation as the ability of looking at solutions to a problem without rational thought sometimes, right? Or an absence of rational thought. So solar panels are really, really expensive in all parts of the world, and really expensive in Africa. So Nedbank did an amazing thing. They wanted to supply power and light to a kitchen in a school in the Deep Sloot area in Johannesburg. So what they did is they mounted solar panels on top of one of their billboards. Now the reason I bring this up is not because it's a nice billboard or not because it shows up at night and is lit up at night, which it does, but it's purposely set up with a low voltage shock perimeter to prevent people from climbing up and stealing the solar panels. Okay? So sometimes in order to create a solution, you really have to understand your environment. And so many of our finalists tonight spent the time and energy, months at a time, whether it was in the poorest areas of Ethiopia, or working on solutions for fish or goat or rabbit. I'm surprised those weren't on the menu tonight. To spend time and figure out what people actually do, how they work, because there are so many times that I've spent out in the regions where you see piles of desktops piled up in the corner like doorstops, because there was no thought process of how this would be perpetuated long term. So the long-term thinking about innovation in developing areas is just so important. I just have one more example, which is Sanfat Bagar, but it's actually a larger example. Sanfat Bagar is in western Nepal. It lies sort of at a crossroads between Delhi and rural workers in Nepal. And it's a terrible location because the HIV/AIDS prevalence is just so huge. But the notion that the reason we went there is that they had an opportunity to put in a teleconference center. I was especially interested in some of our medical submissions today, because the idea was, how do you create a teleconference center that can meet the needs of tens of thousands, or in this case, 120,000 potential people? In other words, that this location would be the closest medical location for 120,000 people. And it's the little things, which are that if you create a wonderful medical center here, you're doing okay. But it was Kamal Nath that actually said, yes, you could do that. That sounds great. But unless you create an environment where the doctor who's going to staff it or the nurse is going to staff it has a great environment that they want to live in, then no one will staff the clinic, and it will be gone in a matter of months. So it's the little things that you have to think about when you do these programs. A number of you have probably been here. This is one of the hole-in-the-wall NIIT examples in Delhi. One of the amazing features of this is that it was originally designed so that it'd be lower than normal adult height, so that only the kids would use it. And unfortunately, all that meant was that originally the adults just brought up boxes so that they could sit, and that wasn't very good. So sometimes your little thing ideas turn. So that relates to this notion of adaptability. You have to be able to adapt to your environment. But these are incredibly sturdy structures that are really well tampered down. But the best picture, and I wasn't able to grab it tonight, is that the kids actually let these metal things on the top drop, and it allows them to have a glare-free screen, right, when they use these things. But the transformative capability of even a single point like this in an environment is just extraordinary. It literally changed. When we visited there, we tried to spend about 3 or 4 hours just talking to these people, and the ones that were most impressive were the young women who absolutely would have been in the slave trade, except for the fact that they came to the alley every day in this public environment, and they were talking about becoming doctors and lawyers and engineers. And it blew my mind when they said the word engineer. But this is a transforming point where people, like we talked about with innovation before, see something and say, wow, that is something that I would love to be involved in. I touched it, I felt it, I have an emotion about it, and it's going to change my life in terms of what my aspirations are forever. So this is the last one, which is, I think, that I'll share with you and let you get through and past dinner and dessert. But I spent a number of trips to Haiti after the earthquake, and this one is a little hard to read, but what was extraordinary and behind this little piece of wood were car batteries. And this was set up within only about 5 or 6 days of the event. And what it says is, it says US to Canada, it talks about the number of minutes, but it's actually not talking about dialing phones. It's talking about internet access. One of the things we have to think about in terms of our world today versus 10 years ago is that everybody knows what the internet is. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, everybody knew, the word Google. Today, everyone knows what Facebook and Twitter is. And you've now created, through events and opportunities, a whole globe of people that understand that they have to have this access. And that we have to be able to think innovatively in terms of providing that access, because there's just going to be no excuse not to deliver it anymore. So very briefly, the modest things that we've done, and I promise you this will be only 140 characters or less. We've created something called Development Innovation Ventures, which basically is a similar construct to what you've witnessed tonight, which is to inspire people who have great business plans in field testing and provide them with fundings in 3 tiers, from $100,000 to $3 million. We've created a number of things with NASA and Nike called Launch that, again, act as a catalyst and an environment to inspire people to incubate some of these young entrepreneurs. And grand challenges. And I'm very excited about grand challenges, and I hope you will be too, because grand challenges are not MDGs, but approachable, solvable problems with metrics against them that we can solve in a matter of years, that we are approaching with organizations like the ones here to say, this is an open challenge, there's no one solution, we're all partners, let's figure out how we can come together and make things happen. So I believe that's the end of my deck. There's no question that today was an extraordinary day. I can't prime the pump too much, because the 5 finalists that we reviewed today were extraordinary. And I think the sense of wonder of what they experienced, the sense of people seeing an absolute need and going after it, is the spirit that we all need to take. We all obviously can be entrepreneurial, but what I really enjoyed the most was the fact that these people had this spirit and this desire, having spent, as a number of us have, time out in the field and doing this stuff. I think people that come back that innovate after doing are going to be the ones that are going to change the world. And I think the people that I met today were extraordinary and will change the world. And one of the things that we're challenged with, of course, is figuring out how to bring those people together, how to get these solutions to scale. And part of that is visibility, part of that is encouragement, part of that is investment. And it's a privilege to be with you and to be involved with that activity, and to be as proud as I am to be associated with you. So thank you very much, I appreciate it, and thanks.